Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai Shri Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajapacharya Satyara, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Gora Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet and the smiling face of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. I don't understand this. I had it all set up for the anyway. So in the third canto, we are in the 25th chapter, and we are in the 13th verse. You did 12, yeah? Okay. So word by word in translation. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha. The personality of Godhead said. Yoga, the yoga system. Aryatmika, relating to the soul. Pumsam, of living entities. Mata is approved. Nishreyasyaha, for the benefit, for the ultimate benefit. Me, by me. Atyanta, complete. Uparati, detachment. Yatra, where. Dukhasya, from distress. Cha, and. Sukhasya, from happiness. Cha, and. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha. Yoga Aryatmika Pumsam. Matoni Heshrasya Me. Aryanto Paratiryatra. Dukkasya cha sukhasya cha. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Yoga Adhyatmika Pumsam. Matoni Heshrasya Syame. Atyanto Patiryatra. Dukkasya cha sukhasya cha. So in the expedience of time, we'll have one of the gentlemen and one of the ladies. Please chant. So we'll start with the ladies. One lady, please chant for everybody. And if you don't chant, we'll move along. So speak up, please. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Gentlemen. Thank you. The translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead replied, the yoga system which relates to the Lord and the individual soul, which is meant for the ultimate benefit of the living entity, and which causes detachment from all happiness and distress in the material world, is the highest yoga system. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the material world, everyone is trying to get some material happiness, but as soon as we get some material happiness, there is also material distress. In the material world, one cannot have unadulterated happiness. Any kind of happiness one has is contaminated by distress also. For example, if we want to drink milk, then we have to bother to maintain a cow and keep her fit to supply milk. Drinking milk is very nice. It is also pleasure. But for the sake of drinking milk, one has to accept so much trouble. And nowadays, there's a lot of trouble, thanks to the vegans who attack you even if you're protecting cows for drinking milk. The yoga system, as here stated by the Lord, is meant to end all material happiness and material distress. The best yoga, as taught in Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, is Bhakti Yoga. It is mentioned in the Gita that one should try to be tolerant and not be disturbed by material happiness or distress. Of course, one may say that he is not disturbed by material happiness, but he does not know that just after one enjoys so-called material happiness, material distress will follow. This is the law of the material world. Lord Kapila states that the yoga system is the science of the spirit. One practices yoga in order to attain perfection on the spiritual platform. There is no question of material happiness or distress. It is transcendental. Lord Kapila will eventually explain how it is transcendental, but the preliminary introduction is given here. Please repeat. The personality of Godhead answered. The yoga system which relates to the Lord and the individual soul, which is meant for the ultimate benefit of the living entity, and which causes detachment from all happiness and distress in the material world, is the highest yoga system. Om Gyantamirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakchum Meditam Dena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Prabhupada pronouns, please everybody together. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskachita Satarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaurabhakta Vrinda. When you have the opportunity to chant Prabhupada's pranams, you should give it a little utsara, It's like, really. Now, the Hare Krishna mantra with some energy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha, Krita Sindhu Vayevyacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Anyway, I can imagine that all of you who are on this transcendental yatra, the American tour, you must be really exhausted. And I'm trying to move things along because I know right after class of prasadam and go to Gita Nagari Dham. And it's not exactly around the corner, but it's a beautiful ride. So yesterday, it wasn't yesterday actually, it was the day before, in the class, there was a mention about Krishna's smiling face. And it is something I wanted to kind of mention today. That it's something that is actually very significant, and it's mentioned, I forget how many times, in the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Bhagavad Gita, and other books. So therefore, it is actually something quite significant. In the beginning of this particular chapter, it was mentioned how the Lord descends for the benefit of the human race to give transcendental knowledge. And then it mentioned that actually material necessities are quite sufficiently provided for in the Vedic knowledge, which offers a program for good living conditions and gradual elevation to the platform of goodness. So in the platform of goodness, one's knowledge expands. And then in the platform of passion, there is no knowledge. And for passion, it's simply an impetus to enjoy material life, material benefits. And in the platform of ignorance, there's no knowledge, there's no enjoyment, simply like life of the animals. Prabhupada's words, not mine. Some people don't like to hear that too much. At the same time, if we don't hear it, and we kind of like let it go out the door of our minds. I just want to make a small mention of something that Prabhupada mentioned to one of the artists, actually to all the artists. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is not a cartoon character. And he said that he should be depicted realistically. Why? So he does not become a laughingstock. Why am I saying this? Because I see so many little cartoon Krishnas, even in the front of our temple, this big banner with a cartoon Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada said, no, he should be depicted realistically. How many of you have a keychain with a little cartoon Krishna? You shouldn't even have Krishna on your keychain because, then your hands are all over. So Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we should be very cautious and careful. And remember, here he is. He's real. He's realistic. and you should not become a laughing stock. Otherwise, what? People won't take us seriously. In the first canto, 11th chapter, getting back to the smiling face, it said, oh, it's our good luck that we have again come under your protection for your presence. For your lordship rarely visits even the denizens of heaven. Now it's possible for us to look upon your smiling face, which is full of affectionate glances. We can now see your transcendental form, full of all auspiciousness. And in the second canto, it is mentioned, second chapter, 11th verse, describing Krishna. He's well decorated with an ornamental wreath around his waist, rings studded with valuable jewels on his fingers, his leglets, his bangles, his oiled curling hair, curling with a bluish tint, and his beautiful smiling face are all pleasing. So we hear these things about Krishna, and it's very helpful for us in trying to remember him, because Prabhupada and the Bhagavatam are showing just how Krishna looks like. So then you can also say, well, if some of the things we do, like poking blue eyes in Krishna, which is quite a common thing, go in our gift shop, you'll see it. Look at some of the modern Nouveau paintings, you'll see it. Krishna didn't have blue eyes, dark eyes. Prabhupada was asked about that. He had dark eyes, brownish, black. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the most beautiful person of all others. And Srila Sukadeva Goswami describes every part of his transcendental beauty, one after another, in order to teach the impersonalist. And we ourselves can fall into that category sometimes, particularly in the beginning. It may have been that way, that we were not aware, due to our background and our association, we weren't aware that Krishna is a person, a transcendental person. So in order to teach the impersonalist that the personality of Godhead is not imagination by the devotees, just to give us something to do, some worship, but is the Supreme Person in fact and in figure. So this impersonalist feature of the Absolute Truth, it's this radiation, just as the sun rays are radiation. Yesterday we finally got some radiation of the sun. Not sure what will happen today, but this beautiful person, Krishna, I had god sisters, notably Kamagiri Devi in Columbus, and Chandravali, who has left her body back in 1967. She was given by me a picture of Srila Prabhupada. And she was captured by his beauty. And when she first saw him in person, she kept going closer and closer and closer, because she couldn't believe anybody could be so beautiful. She actually thought he was wearing makeup. So she got closer and closer to see. And she realized, no, he wasn't wearing makeup. He was radiating beauty. One devotee, sorry, I can't think of her name at the moment, my God, but in Amsterdam, what's that country right below? Holland? Belgium, yes. So from Belgium, sorry. Her brother was a devotee, and he gave her a book. And there was Prabhupada's picture. She tore out the picture. She didn't keep the book because at that time she wasn't ready to read, but she was captivated by the beauty of Prabhupada, and she kept it in a pocket in her leather jacket. Later on, she came to understand more, and to this very day, she is still serving His divine grace. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glancing of a smiling face are all indications of His extensive benedictions. One should therefore concentrate on the transcendental form of the Lord, as is described in Shastra, as long as the mind can be fixed upon Him by meditation. In the Gita, it's said that the impersonalists undergo a series of difficult programs on account of his impersonal meditations, but the devotees, due to the Lord's personal service, progress very easily. Sometimes maybe we're thinking, am I really progressing? Would this speak of easily? In one of the purports in Bhagavatam, Prabhupada points out, occasionally look back at where you are, where you started, and then you can see, yes, there is some progress. But impersonal meditation is described as a source of suffering for the impersonalists. So the devotees have an advantage over the impersonalist philosophy. The impersonalist is doubtful about the personal feature of the Lord. They always try to meditate upon something which is not objective, like nothingness, the void. For this reason, there is an authentic statement in the Bhagavatam regarding the positive concentration of the mind on the factual form of the Lord. Purification. So we talk a lot about purification. How are you, Prabhu? Oh, I'm getting purified. So what does purification mean? It means getting free gradually from sex desire. And this is attained by meditation on the person of the Lord, beginning from the feet. One should not try to go upwards artificially without seeing him, how much he's been released from sex desire. It's like taking your own temperature. You have to check yourself. The smiling face of the Lord is the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. We all, I'm sure most everyone at least knows that that little sloka, when I think of sex, I simply spit. You all know that, right? One god sister one time went up to Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, when I think of sex, I simply spit. Prabhupada looked at her and he says, first become free of sex desire and then spit. In other words, spitting will not free you from sex desire. So as one gets free from the intoxication of sex indulgence by purification of the intelligence, one should begin the process of meditation from the lotus feet of the Lord and progress to a smiling face. And this meditation should be concentrated first on the lotus feet, then the calves and the thighs, and this way higher and higher. And then the more the mind becomes fixed on the different parts of the Lord's beautiful lotus limbs, one after another, the more the intelligence becomes purified. According to the Bhagavad school, rasa dancing is the smiling face of the Lord. Just like it said, Prabhupada told us, when you see a flower, you are seeing the Lord's smiling face. So it is better to practice concentrating our attention by offering flowers and tulsi to the lotus feet of the Lord. And in this way, one gradually becomes purified by the process of artsana. We dress the Lord, we bathe him, and all these transcendental activities help us purify our existence. And when we reach the higher standard of purification, if we see the smiling face of the Lord, or if we hear at that time about the rasa dance pastimes, then we can relish his activities. In this regards, I was coming across this conversation, it's just last night actually, and Prabhupada speaking to somebody, because we don't offer tulsi and flowers to the Lord's face. It goes to the feet, right? So how wonderful, how beautiful are the lotus feet of the Lord, how powerful. He also acknowledges that the service of the devotees, his smiling, it's like a service to the devotees because it vanquishes our distress by his beautiful smile. And the reflection of his face, decorated with earrings, is so pleasing because it dazzles with the rays of his lips and the beauty of his nose and eyebrows. So, like, generally we're just looking at a person, we see their face. We don't go step by step so much checking out each feature, although honestly when Prabhupada was present, we would just sit there and gaze upon his beautiful face. And I would look at like maybe the ear, or his cheek, or his chin even, or his nose, or his eyebrows. You know, just one feature each day as I was sitting there, because every one of his beautiful features was so captivating. So there are many transcendentalists in different fields of activities, but devotional service to the Lord is unique. Devotees don't ask anything in exchange for their service, or at least we should try to refrain from that. Prabhupada said, even if you do ask and the Lord provides, then you'll be remembering Krishna. Oh, he's given me like this. But the general mood of the devotees, let me give you some service, dear Lord. Not become like this, not like this. Hey, Lord, you know, like this. So then the Lord becomes a kind debtor to the devotees, and he can only try to repay the devotees. And how does he do that? He repays our service with his ever-enchanting smile. And the devotees are ever satisfied by the smiling face of the Lord, and thus we become enlivened. And by seeing the devotees enlivened, then the Lord himself becomes further satisfied. So there's this like continuous transcendental competition between the Lord and his devotees by such reciprocation of service and acknowledgement back and forth. And it's been observed in the Vedic Shastra that when the Brahmanas or the Vaishnavas curse someone in an angry mood, has anybody here ever cursed anybody? The cursing is like quite often, you know, happening in Shastra. We get a few examples. So when the Brahmanas or the Vaishnavas curse someone in an angry mood, the person who's cursed, they don't take it upon themselves to treat the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas in the same way. So there's many examples of this. For example, the sons of Kuvera, they were cursed by the great sage Narada, and he didn't seek revenge in the same harsh way. He submitted. And also, when Jai and Vijay were cursed by the four Kumaras, they didn't become harsh towards the four Kumaras, rather they submitted. So this is a way of treating between Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Sometimes you may be faced with a grievous situation created by a Brahmana, but instead of meeting with him in a similar mood, during the Rath Yatra festival, who was it? He was like he wanted to see the Lord on the cart, and somebody was in front of him, so he pushed them. It was like remember who it was? He was like a very advanced soul, part of Lord Chaitanya's personal. And so the person who got pushed was first like, oh, who's done that? When they turned around and saw who did it, oh, they were feeling so much happiness, you know. So Brahmanas, Vaishnavas, instead of meeting with a similar mood, should try to pacify the person with a smiling face and mild treatment. Because the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas are accepted as earthly representatives of Narayan. There was so many cursing pastimes. Purita was cursed, Prahlad was cursed, Aswatthama was cursed by Krishna, Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya was cursed by a Brahmin. You shall be bereft of all material happiness. And when he heard that, Lord Chaitanya was like great jubilation. He felt so happy within himself. So there's many Shastri conjunctions. They give instructions for carving the forms of the Lord. And these forms aren't material. You may be thinking marble or stone or some other form like now we even have different types of materials, composites, etc. But they're not material. when put into the form of the Lord through the Shastra conjunctions. Accepting that God is all-pervading, he is also in the material elements, but atheists are thinking otherwise. Although they preach everything is God, when they go to the temple and they see the beautiful form of the Lord, they deny it's God. According to their theory, everything is God. So then why isn't the deity also God? They can't quite grasp that. So actually, they don't have a conception of God. But the devotee's vision is different, because the vision of the devotees is smeared with love of God. And as soon as we see the Lord in his different forms, even if we're not fully purified, still the devotees become saturated with affection and love, because we don't find a difference between the Lord and his form in the temple, as do the atheists. The devotees see the smiling face of the deity in the temple as transcendental and spiritual. And the declaration of the body of the Lord is very much appreciated by the devotees. Therefore, there's so many wonderful descriptions in different books, like Krishna book. It even tells how long the garland of the Lord should be. It should go just between the top of his foot, no longer, and maybe to his ankles. Somehow there was a measurement miscalculation today, and dear Vrindavan Chandra has a slightly elongated garland. But Prabhupada explained also to devotees that the garlands should not interfere with the Lord's dancing. So we actually get descriptions how the garland should be. And when we get these instructions, it's the duty of the spiritual master to teach the devotees how to decorate the deity in the temple, how to clean the temple, how to worship the deity. So then it's our duty and the privilege actually to follow the instructions of the spiritual master, particularly Srila Prabhupada, who is our Param Guru. So the devotees are always very eager to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his original form, with his smiling lotus-like face. The Lord has both the impersonal and the personal features, but the devotees, such as the gopis, they aren't interested in experiencing some impersonal feature. Lord Brahma and the members of his disciplic succession want to see the Lord's personal form. And without a personal form, there's no question of a smiling face. There's no question even of devotional service. Without devotional service, Prabhupada said, means a person. You know. So this word murti means form. Krishna, our God, is never impersonal. The personal feature is a manifestation of his transcendental body. And we hear from the Brahma Samhita, Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadananda Koti. So the Lord is Narakriti, exactly resembling the form of a human being, but his form is different from ours. You know, apart from his smiling face, every part of his body, his hands, his legs, his chest, it is pleasing to the devotees who cannot stop seeing the beautiful form of the Lord at any time. At least we should try not to stop seeing. I've told this story many times, but I was in Jaipur one day to take the darshan of Radha Govind. And I was there for the Sringar darshan, and I came early so I could be really close. And this lovely young woman, she was really quite beautiful, and she came with her little baby, also to take the darshan. So we were side by side. And I was thinking, and it was really wonderful to see this beautiful young lady and her baby so eager for the darshan. And then the curtains open, and if you've been there, you know how thrilling it is. There is Govinda, the primeval Lord. And this lady was looking, and all of a sudden she's looking at her baby. Then she's looking at Govinda, and then she's looking at her baby. Like, that's our predicament in this material world, you know. At one level, we just always want to be with Krishna, to see his beautiful form, and then something else distracts us. There's a beautiful verse, my dear friend, if you are indeed attached to your worldly friends, do not look upon the smiling face of Lord Govinda as he stands on the bank of the Yamuna Acacia Ghat. Casting sidelong glances, he places his fruit to his lips, which seem like newly blossomed twigs. His transcendental body, bending in 3 paces, appears very bright in the moonlight. So this verse is quoted from Bhakti Rasamrita and it's mentioned in CC. And it's in connection, Prabhupada said, with practical devotional service. Generally, people in the conditioned life engage in the pleasure of society, friendship, love, and this so-called love is just lust, not love. But people are satisfied, misinformed, misguided people are satisfied with their false understanding of love. So Vidyapati was a great and learned poet of Attila, and he said that the pleasure derived from friendship, society, and family in the material world is like a drop of water, but our hearts desire the pleasure of an ocean. Now, for devotees, our friendship, our devotee society, our family life, it's not material. So this needs to be carefully understood. You know, the association of devotees and the friendship of devotees is very much desirable. It's wanted. And our families are sacred, they're special, because they're also devotees of Krishna. So they shouldn't be eschewed, they shouldn't be ignored. But if we go after material pleasure, it's just like that little drop of water in the ocean. You know, it's like a little drop, like the heart is compared to a desert and material existence. So if you're in the desert, you need an ocean of water, and a little drop of water isn't going to handle it, you know. So if there's a drop of water in the desert, you can say, well, there's water, little drop. But such a minute quantity of water has no value in the desert. So therefore, if one wants to derive real pleasure within his heart, he must seek the lotus feet of Govinda. This is mentioned in the TLC chapter 10. So what else is there for 2 eyes to see beyond the smiling face of Krishna? Since we can't adequately see Krishna with our only 2 eyes, one feels incapable and then you become bereaved. And that bereavement is slightly reduced by criticizing the creative power of the Creator. Like the gopis, they were very disturbed that Lord Brahma gave them eyelids, because when they would blink, at that moment of the blink, they couldn't see their beloved Govinda. So then they were thinking, this Creator is not very intelligent. He's not conversant in the art of ecstasy. Just a prosaic Creator. He doesn't know how to arrange things properly so that one can only see Krishna. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was desiring many mouths once he became enlightened about Krishna's personality of Godhead. He desired many mouths to glorify Krishna. And when Krishna returned to Dwarka, the inhabitants said, "Dear Lord, if you remain in foreign countries for so long, we will certainly be bereft of seeing your smiling face." Sometimes when he was in Dwarka, some of the elderly members of the Yadu dynasty would put some important matters before him. So he would give careful attention. And if there were some humorous topics mentioned, Krishna immediately responded with a smiling face. It's said by expert scholars that laughing is generally found among youngsters or in the combination of old persons and children, young children. And this ecstatic, loving laugh is sometimes also found in persons who are very grave by nature. So once this old mendicant approached the door of Yasoda Mata's house, and Krishna said to her, his mother, "My dear mom, don't go near this skinny villain. If I go there, he might put me within his begging bag and take me away from you. And then Krishna was looking at Yasoda while the mendicant, he was standing in the doorway and he was trying to hide his smiling face upon hearing the words of Krishna, but he just couldn't stop to smile. And Krishna immediately expressed his smiling upon seeing that scene. Sometimes you'll see Prabhupada in a picture and he's looking very grave. He has this gravitas. And one time there was a guest, a young person, and he was like, why doesn't he ever smile? And Prabhupada said, he simply does not understand my ecstasy. So we are hearing, seeing, thinking things according to our understanding, our experience. But as we become fully connected with Krishna, our experience will expand. One time one of Krishna's friends informed him, Krishna, if you open your mouth, I'll give you some nice sugar candy mixed with yogurt. And then Krishna immediately opened his mouth, but instead of giving him sugar candy with yogurt, he dropped a flower in his mouth. And he was tasting the flower, and he turned his mouth, what describes this in a disfigured way. And you're expecting one thing, you get something else. So your mouth will express something. And when all the friends saw this, they began to laugh very loudly. So personal experience, one time with my daughter, Saraswati, at John Lennon's house, Prabhupada had his own little, we all had little compartments there. And Prabhupada was there with his small deities, and he'd been teaching Jamuna deity worship. And at the evening, anybody could come up if you could get in, because it was small, but anybody could come in and enjoy the evening arti. And my daughter had an open pass. She could go anytime she wanted to Prabhupada's quarters. So she marches in, and it was just at the time when the flower had been offered. And Jamuna offers the flower to Prabhupada. And at that same time, my daughter turned around and she starts to march out of the room. And Prabhupada took the flower and he threw it at her and hit her on the top of the head. My daughter bent down, picked up the flower, held her hand out like this, turned around, marched to Prabhupada, and popped that flower in his mouth. So it was a very pleasing moment for all the devotees, except for one. And that one devotee was critical. He became critical. Yes, he said, he's playing with a girl child. He also criticized during, I was there for this also, he was present during the so-called moon landing. We were in London at the time and we were staying in an apartment near the wax museum, Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. And we watched the show, the touchdown. And then Prabhupada said, they did not go. And this person said, but we just saw them, we just saw it. And Prabhupada looks up with his very wonderful humor. Turn off the idiot box. It's just made idiots of us. So, it's confirmed in the Gita that the purpose of Vedic knowledge is to find Krishna. It's said in the Brahma Samhita, however, that it's very difficult to find Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by systematic reading of the Vedic literature. It's not how you'll actually find him. But he is very easily available through the mercy of a pure devotee. The pure devotees of Vrindavan are fortunate because they can see Mukunda, Lord Krishna, all of the time. Just like Srila Prabhupada was always seeing Lord Krishna and describing Lord Krishna to us. The difference between the pure devotees of Vrindavan and the devotees in other places is that the residents of Vrindavan have no other desire but to be associated with Krishna. Krishna being very kind to his devotees, he fulfills their desire. And because they always want to be in Krishna's association, the Lord is always prepared to give it to them. So the devotees of Vrindavan are spontaneous lovers of Krishna. It's automatic. It just springs out of their hearts. They're not required to follow strict regulative principles because they've already developed naturally spontaneous transcendental love for Krishna. Prabhupada told us once they didn't go to Mongol Arti, they went to the fields with their plows, but they were chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Let's try that again. They were chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. He also told Shyam Sundar that Arjuna wasn't chanting 16 rounds on the battlefield. He was fully absorbed in Krishna. Krishna's eyes appear to spread like lotus petals, and his smiling face exhibits the symbol of eternal peace and prosperity. Nice meditation, right? Eternal peace and prosperity. This is Krishna book, chapter 73. So this is our Krishna consciousness movement. That is, we're constantly engaging in our mind, thinking of the lotus feet of Krishna, beginning at the lotus feet of Krishna. Prabhupada said, not all of a sudden jumping up. You cannot think of Krishna all of a sudden from the top. In the second canto, you'll find we have to think of the lotus feet. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second canto, are the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and then gradually rise. And when you become accustomed to think of Krishna, this is called transcendental meditation. At any moment, if you immediately meditate, you'll see the lotus feet of Krishna, and then gradually rise to think of this portion, and at last, the smiling face. This is transcendental meditation. The smiling face, compared to what? The 10th canto. Arjuna was disturbed in so many ways. But as soon as he began to remember Krishna's lotus feet, immediately everything became he became pacified. So this is the process, the transcendental consciousness or transcendental meditation. Immediately, without any delay, for a moment, you'll feel completely pacified. In the first canto 15:28, Arjuna began to think of the Lord's instructions to him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and recalling these instructions. He began to eliminate the tinges of material contamination from Arjuna's mind. And the next verse, Arjuna's constant remembrance of the Lord's feet rapidly increased his devotion, and as a result, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. So as soon as Arjuna turned his attention towards the instructions of the Lord, as inculcated in the Gita, this is a very interesting description. So he turned, he's returned. Krishna has left his sight, and he's feeling so many emotions. And then he turns his attention towards the instructions of the Lord, as inculcated in the Gita. And his true color of eternal association with the Lord became manifest. So that is, I would say, an eternal meditation. The true color of the Lord. We can say blue. What blue? The blue in the material world is flatlined. But the blue, any color in the spiritual world, you can say it's shimmering. And what kind of blue is it anyway? We can't even imagine from our current vantage point. So his true color of eternal association of the Lord became manifest. and thus he felt free from all material contaminations. Krishna's always smiling because, why? He's Ananda Mayo Avasya. So this is a feature of Krishna. He's Ananda Maya. Prabhupada mentioned this on a morning walk in Ahmedabad. So then Prabhupada said, in another situation, our London deities are certainly very, very nice. And everyone is captivated by seeing the smiling face of the Lord. Isn't that true? When you go to London, you go either to the Manor, but especially I have to say at Soho Street, the smiling face of Radha Ishwara, so unique. And Prabhupada said it is very enchanting. Now everything is there, and you are also experienced. Therefore, go on opening as many branches as possible and preach the Sankirtan movement according to your best capacity. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur entrusted the responsibility to my Guru Maharaj. He's speaking about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He entrusted the responsibility to my Guru Maharaj, and he, meaning at this point Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, in his turn empowered us to do the work. So